Everybody to the Rules Committee meeting. I'm joined by my colleagues and friends, Mr. Jose Huizar and Marquise Harris Dawson. Mr. Clerk, we do have a quorum. Let's do this first. Why don't we deal with items 2, 3, and 4, which I have on the consent calendar. It's my understanding there are no cards on those items. Read those items, let's vote, and then we'll go into item 1.
Good morning, sir. Item number 2 is motion Blumenfeld-Krikorian relative to a request to the city attorney to prepare and present an ordinance amending section 8.231 of the Los Angeles Administrative Code to authorize the council president to appoint members of the Innovation and Performance Commission from nominations submitted by the chairs of the Budget and Finance, the Personnel and Animal Welfare, and Public Works and Gang Reduction Committees. Item number 3 is resolution Bond and Koretz relative to support for a 180-day extension of the comment period for the draft environmental impact statement for the Bologna Wetlands Restoration Project. Item number 4 is resolution Wesson Price and CLA report relative to including in the city's 2017-18 state legislative program support for Senate Bill 25, which would establish a revised order of precedence on state ballots in which local offices and measures appear first, followed by state and national measures and elections.
Thank you very much. So, members, unless you have some questions, without objection, these items will be deemed approved. On item 2, we'll adopt the motion. On item 3, we'll adopt the CLA report and resolution. And on item 4, we'll adopt the CLA report and resolution as well. Again, without objection, these items are approved. All right, Mr. Clerk, why don't you, if you would, please read item 1.
Item number 1 is Chief Legislative Analyst report relative to a social equity analysis of cannabis regulations aimed at promoting equitable ownership and employment opportunities in the cannabis industry, and motion Harris Dawson, Price, Huizar relative to requesting the city attorney to prepare an ordinance establishing a social equity program for recreational cannabis dispensaries based on recommendations from the social equity report. And additionally, we have received into the record recommendations from the committee chair. Would you like me to read those recommendations?
Please.
The recommendation is to instruct the CLA and the CAO, with the assistance of the Department of Cannabis Regulation and the city attorney, to report back prior to November 17th, 2017, with a budget staffing and legal analysis with respect to the recommendations of the Cannabis Social Equity Analysis Report dated October 2017. This should include a review of the potential for utilizing requests for qualifications or requests for proposals for the following proposed programs: the Industry Ownership Investment Program and Fund, the Incubator Pilot or Industry Partner Program, Social Equity Program Outreach, and expungement of cannabis-related criminal records.
Okay, thank you. Mr. City Attorney, you good with that? All right, so I have some cards on the item. I think we'll start off with the cards. I'm going to then bring up staff that will walk through the report that was just released. So, Mr. Cisneros, Zachary Pitts. Okay, and Robert from UFCW. Yes, sir.
Good morning. My name is Moises Cisneros. I'm the Executive Director of the Los Angeles Latino Chamber of Commerce. We have an issue with the definition of how you define ownership requirement, specifically where it states that the 51% ownership in the business or the majority of the board of directors. This doesn't make sense to us, and it laughs at the definition and the reason for having a social impact report. 51% ownership is what's important, not whether or not 51% of the individuals on your board qualify.
Okay, I tell you what, when we bring the staff up, I'll ask them about that.
And then additionally, if I may, I'd recommend that you update the table number 3 where it states the race and ethnicity characteristics used, states you used 2010. I would suggest you use the 2016 report from the Thomas Dorothy Levy Center for the Study of Los Angeles, where it states that Latino population in LA County is 50%. Thank you.
Okay, next speaker. Good to see you.
Hello, good to see you. My name is Zachary Pitts. I'm with the LA Delivery Alliance, and we're really excited about this social equity program. We feel like there's a lot of opportunity in space in the delivery side of the business. Already we have a number of existing members, and we know a number of existing owners of delivery services. Are those who are going to be most, who you're trying to, the types of people you're trying to target with this social equity program? I think personally that our organization also offers a lot of opportunity for that kind of professional mentorship. Already we've mentored some people and helped with that kind of that training that's necessary to make sure that they survive and succeed. Obviously, there's so much more that they need from the city and why this program is so important, but we feel like we could be one of those partners to really help put this program into true successes. So thank you very much, and I appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Appreciate your time.
So next and after the next speaker, if I could get Sarah Armstrong, I think it's Don Ray Vaughn, and Stephen Vasquez. Yes, sir.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much. My name is Robert Salela. I'm a researcher working with UFCW Local 770, which represents thousands of workers throughout Los Angeles. We just really want to convey our strong support and thanks to each of you, Council President, Council members, Jose Huizar, Kern Price, and Harris Dawson for supporting social equity, driving this process, and for both your analysis and this ordinance, as well as for your selection of Kat Packer, once again, who's taken the lead on this. We just want to strongly support this effort, which we believe will really have an impact both on small business creation, but also workforce development in the affected communities, as well as community reinvestment and decriminalization, which we believe to be strongly community-led processes. We want to submit our official report, which we submitted in August and spoke to different members about, into the official record today, and really offer our help to each of you as you continue to build this, and thank you and all the community members who continue to come out for this again and again. Thank you so much, and we will be submitting our report at the end of this. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for coming, Sarah.
Morning, sir.
Morning to you.
Well, this is a pretty great day. We're very excited. My organization is Americans for Safe Access. Since 2002, we've represented medical cannabis patients. I'm also the policy chair for the SCC. Today, I would just like to ask you to be very vigilant and make sure that the program is as litigation-proof as possible. We don't want to stall behind greed, and that's all an opposition to this program would be. We would also like to ask that for any outside organizations that provide training or any kind of help, that they be watched very carefully, held to their benchmarks, and supervised carefully so that the people who have been injured in the past are not injured in the future by people who are not doing their jobs. Thank you again, President Wesson, and to the entire council. Thank you.
Hey, Sarah, let me ask you.
Sir.
Have you been to like almost every hearing we've had?
Going back 12 years, yes, sir. And I look forward to our ordinance because it means that I can take my rest.
No, I don't want you to rest. I want you to keep coming. Good to see you again.
Good to see you.
Okay, Mr. Vaughn, Mr. Vasquez, and Virgil Grant. Yes, he has. Hey, good to see you.
Good to see you, sir. Thank you to the council for having us, to the city attorney, who I think is a new audience. I want to talk about the social equity program from the financing perspective. As a technology investor here in the city, I'd say that cannabis is rivaling technology as far as people being interested in the sector and financiers being interested in investing. So I think that we should be cautious of something happening in D.C. where they frame it as a beltway bandit, to where financing individuals will put minorities in front of these companies or challenge individuals in front of these companies, not as true operators, but as a way to get access. So I think that the 51% of the board is a no-go. I think that building the businesses and then selling them in a short amount of time, transferring equity is a no-go. And I think that this is a legacy scenario. So 3 years from now, like supplier diversity, will you actually have penetration or will you have fraud? Thank you.
Thank you. Stephen, Virgil, and then Brian Bowens.
Good morning, council members. My name is Stephen Vasquez. Good to see you today. I'm here just to make sure that the social equity program goes through. I'm a business owner in Los Angeles. I have a nonprofit that operates in South LA. We've seen the devastation that was created by the war on drugs. So we want to make sure that the social equity component is thought out and make sure that we get after the Prop D goes through, we want to make sure that we get at least 150 social equity businesses through to get licensed as well, and then do a one-for-one. I'd like to see that happen. And we also have a program where we are doing training and mentorship as well as funding, and we'd like to talk more about that as well.
Thank you.
Good morning,
Virgil.
Council. My name is Virgil Grant, President Wesson, Harris Dawson, Weezar. This is a great day, and we just like to really thank you as the industry for being forthright. I remember 2014 when I first approached this microphone and started the conversation of social equity. What about us? And so now this has come to fruition. And we want to make sure that you know that you have the full support of everyone in the industry of seeing this through. And we just can't thank you enough about this social equity piece and how it will benefit communities that have been negatively impacted by the failed war on drugs. Thank you.
Thank you. So, Cherie, I thought I saw you earlier. Yeah, come on up, Cherie. And Karim Webb. I didn't see that. Now I see you. All right, man.
They're all here.
Go ahead.
Good morning, Council. My name is Brian Bowens. I'm a resident of Los Angeles for over 30 years. I have been personally impacted by the broken criminal justice system and particularly by the war on drugs. I appreciate the social equity component that you guys are considering, but I would like to just give you one more suggestion. With all the concerns about the legitimacy, the potential fraud, and things of that nature that will come from social equity, I think it would be incumbent upon us to look at having a tiered system where you have the 51% ownership. Those organizations would receive a more top-tier benefit from social equity, but I think the necessity for having a less percentage of ownership, potentially having a floor of like 33% ownership would be awful beneficial to other organizations. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Hey there.
Good morning, and thank you. I want to echo Virgil's comments. You guys are going down in history on this one. This is going to change the landscape of our community, and we cannot thank you enough. And thank you, Ms. Kat Packer, for your leadership. I'm Cherie Franklin with Think and Grow Lab. We are a training and entrepreneurial center here at the LaCretz Innovation Center, and we've just been accepted at the Dominguez University as one of their entrepreneur programs in cannabis. So we're here to help implement the social equity program, partner with the leaders in this community and the efforts of others. We have organizations such as Concerned Citizens, PV Jobs, Institute for Maximum Human Potential are here, and we've been reaching out to partner with CMA and looking forward to working with them to implement and make sure that this opportunity comes to fruition, and it can. In its form and format, it can and it will. Thank you.
Thank you. And then after Kareem, if I could get Brian Ross, Jorge Borelli, Hope Ricks, Tyron Turner. Hey, man.
Council President Councilman Harris Dawson and Wazar. Thank you for hearing me today. I just come here as not a participant in the industry, but as a concerned citizen and business owner, especially in South LA, who's seen thousands of young people that have worked for us have a desire to be involved in ownership. And that social equity, I think, goes a long way in the direction of helping people create what they want for themselves and their own community. And I came here today, again, as a concerned citizen of Los Angeles and as a business owner, to thank you all for championing social equity and to say that we support it 100%.
Thank you. Good to see you. Next, please identify yourself.
Good morning, Brian Ross, attorney serving the industry. Thank you again for all your progress. I would like to reiterate the comments of some already who would request that you please consider relaxing the 51% ownership requirement. I think the intention behind this might be to not only ensure a first mover advantage with licensing, but long-term competitiveness, broadest access to capital, and so forth. The other request is, I don't see anything in the report, unless I was missing it, with respect to areas like Inglewood, which I know are independent cities, but I believe were hard hit during the war on drugs. So I would consider making sure that people from those neighborhoods can also participate in the social equity program. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, please.
Good morning. My name is Jorge Borelli. I own a small delivery service in Los Angeles. I'm a minority. Both my parents are immigrants. I got into the industry. I was unemployed at the moment when I got into the industry. Couldn't find a loan to start any other kind of business. I've struggled to stay open, but I've stayed open. I've had all my employees paid through payroll, workman's comp. I pay my city taxes. I'm very much in support of the social equity program because I have an uncle and his cousin who had possession convictions and lost their jobs and had a very negative impact on our family. I just want to make sure that I put out my voice here, put a face to support to the social equity program, and that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you for coming down. Next, and you are?
My name is Tyron Turner. Good morning, everybody, council members.
Good morning.
First of all, I just want to say thank you for even putting this on the table. I'm a small business owner. I work with developmentally disabled adults, and some of them take a lot of psychotropic medications, but some of our patients now take some of the cannabis form medications. Some of those prescription pills are taken away from them. But it's very, very important. When I drive around South LA, this social equity program is very, very important because when I pass by the businesses in my neighborhood, the owners don't look like me. But people that look like me are the ones that disproportionately put in prison for marijuana sales and possessions. So I agree with what you guys doing. I support it 100%. Give us a chance to have a seat at the table. And thank you.
Thank you. So are you Miss Ricks?
Good morning, Council. Yes, I am Hope Ricks.
Hold tight. Hold her time. I'm looking for Tyrone Freeman, Cliff Albright, and Brent Page. Now, the floor is yours.
Sorry, I apologize. I thought you were calling them up before me.
No.
Good morning, Council. I'm Hope Ricks. My company is Purple Trilogy, and I just want to commend and thank the city with my deepest sincerity for attempting to put social equity applicants in the same running as the first-tier applicants, Prop D, as well as the second-tier applicants, general applicants, because although everyone supports the social equity program, not everyone really gets to what degree we were impacted. And myself personally, I've never been charged, don't have a record, anything like that, but I'm a female growing up in South LA, and I witnessed all of our men just gone away, just gone. And so that tore families apart. As a result, a lot of youth were just by the boatload ushered into foster care. And so people really do not understand the depths of what's happened with this. And I think this is just one reparation, if you will, to kind of help us get back on track. And I'm just so appreciative. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, Mr. Freeman.
Mr. Chairman, honorable members of the committee, my name is Tyrone Freeman, and I serve as the Executive Director for the California Minority Alliance. And on behalf of our members and the communities of which we're all engaged in the city of Los Angeles, we want to thank you for this tremendous job, Mr. Chairman, and work that you all have done. We want to emphasize the fact that social equity is about economic prosperity for those who have been disadvantaged, and we can't forget that. We also believe that the city will benefit. When you look at the extensive report, Mr. Chairman and others, I think it's important for the community to know, as we've spread the word, that the economic prosperity is based on the fact of training and opportunity, and that's what CMA does, and that's what social equity is about. And I want to say to all those who may focus on business like I have over the last half a decade, from the perspective of workers, from the perspective of opportunity, that when you are inclusive, this city will benefit not only from tax revenue, but from job creation, but not only that, from membership and ownership of a city that is diverse in its own nature. So the economic prosperity that comes from equity, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, is highly inclusive of a program of social equity based on the training elements, and we support it and appreciate the work that you've done so far. Thank you.
Thank you. So if I can get Mr. Albright and Mr. Page, followed by Ruben Honig. Mr. Albright.
Good morning, Council. Thank you so much for the opportunity to be here this morning. I appreciate you. And just want you to know that our law firm, Albright, Yee & Schmidt, we support what you're doing, and we do understand that these kind of programs can be manipulated by some members of our community to take advantage of what you are trying to do and make it not what you intended, but to get around it. I have developed a cannabis division in our law firm to assist those people who are in the social equity program and those who are not. But we're going to make sure that what you intended to do actually happens and that there won't be any side deals that interrupt or mislead the people into what this cannabis program is about. Thank you.
Wait a second. Now, you've been around the block for quite some time, have a very reputable firm, and so you went out and recruited attorneys who are experts in this.
Yes, sir. They are experts in the cannabis industry. We've studied the programs in Northern California, and it's what I understand is one of the more successful programs and other programs in the state and around the country to make sure that we understand exactly what you're trying to accomplish and to make sure that those people who are designated as social equity members don't become straw hats in a program that you've worked so hard to put together.
Thank you. It's good for us to know that. We may need to call on you. So, Mr. Page?
Good afternoon, good morning, committee. My name is Brent Page, and I'm the president of the Southwest Neighborhood Council. And I just want to say I'm here to show my support for the social equity program. I represent an area that is one of the hardest hit areas that was on the war on drugs. It's time to put the reinvestment back. Tired of our community being taken advantage of. So this program here is going to allow our neighborhood and our community to be at the table and actually be a part of positive change. So thank you, guys.
No, thank you. Ruben?
Good morning, Council President, Council members. My name is Ruben Honig. I'm the Executive Director of the Los Angeles Cannabis Task Force. I'd like to first and foremost thank this committee, thank CAT for your commitment to fair, responsible, and inclusive regulations of the City of Los Angeles that ensures and prioritizes social equity participation. We have and we will continue to be partners with the city to move this conversation forward. And again, we would like to thank you for all the work that you're doing and appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. So if I could have Sammy, I think it's Mazzali, Johnny, and then Mr. Herman. Ma'am, did you have a card? Did you want to speak?
Yes.
I don't have a card on you, though, or...
No, sir, you don't. May I have something to say?
Yeah, can somebody give her a card?
Thank you.
So, you have it. Go ahead.
Yes, good morning.
Identify yourself.
Yes, sir. My name is Muriel Jones, and thank you, Council. I just wanted to say that in the monumental work that was done by Dr. Joy DeGroot, Post-Traumatic Slave Syndrome, Randall Robinson, in his preface, says that American slavery is the cornerstone of America's wealth and power that exists to this day. I believe that after they did the apology in 2009 for slavery, they made a caveat, they made an addendum that said that this apology in no way can be translated into any kind of financial reparation. I think that what the council is doing, Council President Wesson, I think that it's wonderful that you're offering this social equity conversation, because it would allow LA to show that there is a way to let it be known that the wealth and power that America rests on can be looked at from a social equity point of view. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. So if I could get the next speaker, and I'm looking for David Slocum. And David Slocum, you'll be the last speaker for right now, because I want to bring up the panel. So yes, sir, identify yourself.
My name is Sammy Mazzoli. I'm with the LA Task Force and Cali Kush Tours. We're doing tours for next year. I just want to throw support behind this. I think it's a really great idea. It's definitely needed. One of the issues I've been hearing on the complaint side is that, the inexperience, all that kind of stuff. A lot of us are, it's just, this is life. And we've been working, our company, with the SCORE program. They pretty much gave us a small business mentor, which helped us tremendously, gave us a lot of advice. I thought that would be a great thing to add to this program. Basically, it's a collection of retired people. They do free mentorship for small businesses. Yeah, that's it.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker. Identify yourself.
Good morning, City Council. My name is Johnny Sage. I just had a simple question in regards to what happens with residents who don't currently live in the city of LA right now, but were victims of the war on drugs, and how can they really benefit from the social equity program? Does it include them, and how does all that work? Because I briefly looked over the notes and whatnot, but I didn't see anything that kind of spoke to that.
Okay, well, stick around. We're going to bring up staff. They may very well answer your question. Mr. Herman?
So aren't we all in favor of medical cannabis? Didn't we all vote for Measure 64? Didn't we all ask for more drugs, more alcohol, and more fucking whiskey and beer? That's what we roll in California and LA. Let's just fuck up America and make our dreams possible. 42 USC 1983, local law, and you, Mr. Keebler, put another permit so we can sell more drugs in our streets. Because we all need cannabis. We all need recreational fun. We all need to get fucking high. That's why I like cannabis. My brother was in the U.S. Army, and he lived off the medical marijuana cannabis because the fucker was dying. Liver, kidney failure. Why? Because he worked for the city of L.A. picking up your fucking trash. Now he's dead. 2011.
Hey, keep your voice down. Keep your voice down.
I did.
Keep your voice. Keep your voice down, mister. And you have a great day, okay? Do it again. You're disrupting my meeting. I'm not having it. This issue is too important than to deal with your craziness. So make another sound, and I will ask you to leave. Mr. Slocum, welcome, sir.
Yes, hi, thank you. I just, first would like to say thank you very much for your diligence in going over these issues. I really appreciate your time, energy, and your soul. I would like to state very quickly, I've been a part of the cannabis industry since 2006. I'm actually the very first person to register with the city and come forward. I got into this to help people. I thought that that's what this was about. I wasn't under the impression that I was supposed to make money. So one of the things I would like to say is that...
Sergeant, show him the way out. He's obviously lost.
Packard. Mr. Herman is disrupting our meeting from the back of the room and shouting as he leaves.
It makes him feel good. Yes, go ahead.
So one of the things that I wanted to say was that I have too been impacted and been arrested 3 times. I grew up in a foster home for over 21 years and watched my mother help over 1,700 children. I got into this because I thought it was to help people, and I found myself behind bars 3 individual times. I am here to say thank you very much for taking this issue at heart and understanding that even the industry itself is not here to help and watch the individual people of color move forward. I have had plenty of people come to me trying to extricate me from my own dwelling, trying to get rid of me. I have had individual people that have partnered with me be racist. So I want to say thank you very much for your time and energy.
Thank you for coming down. Okay. I didn't call anybody else, but you're right there.
My name is Daryl Davenport.
But wait, let me just say this. Daryl's going to be the last one to slip in. If I don't call your name, don't come up. Come up when I call your name. Go ahead, Daryl.
Thank you so much. The parking was a little bit atrocious. That's why.
It's all right.
So I wanted to thank you guys as well. The due diligence, I was able to read the social equity and to see what they're going to be doing for a lot of people of color. I just want to make sure that the industry hopefully does not get defaced, as we've seen with other things that have been whitewashed. The melanated people need a voice within this actual preposition to make sure that they're not forgotten. I know that administrative subversion is a big thing after time has kind of gone through, where things will be implemented but then slowly forgotten and regentrified with a new face. Just keep it as it is. Let the people that have gone through the suffering be able to get some restitution from this. This is our last time. You know, we didn't get reparations, so this is it. Thank you.
Thanks for coming down. You know, do you need him to fill out a card? Yeah, would you just, so for our record? Okay, so I'm going to put the public comment on hold for a bit. I'm going to ask the consultants, Ms. Packard, to come forward. Just don't be shy, guys. There should be enough room. You know, we want to welcome you to City Hall. We want to thank you for the work that you did for us. I don't know if you know it, but this Rules Committee, we've been having hearings on this subject since May of 2016. So it's something that we take very seriously. We've had representatives come in from other states and cities, major cities, and amazed that not one of them have some kind of program in place to ensure that everybody has a shot to get into this business. And we here in LA were determined to do that. We believe that people in this country look to LA for leadership. Now, we also know that this is a little complex and a little challenging, but it is very, very important to us, and I just want to thank you for all of the work that you did in putting this document together. So I want to start out with, did you want to start us off, Ms. Packard, and take the lead on this, or because if so, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Honorable Council President, Councilmember Harris Dawson, Councilmember Huizar. As the City of Los Angeles is beginning to have conversations about how it shifts both in policy and in real time from prohibition to regulation, there are a number of serious conversations that has to happen. Those conversations will involve conversations around public health and public safety and youth prevention, and social consumption and economic opportunity. But one of those very important topics and conversations as well is what we do to acknowledge the past impacts of cannabis policy. And so through this social equity program, we have an opportunity and really an obligation as we move forward to understand the past impacts of cannabis policy, the past impacts of marijuana prohibition, and its enforcement. And it's interesting because as this conversation and policy has developed over time, it's become very commonplace in conversations about marijuana legalization to use the rhetoric. We will cite the disparities. We will talk about how communities of color and low-income communities have been disproportionately impacted, how these folks have been arrested, how cannabis arrests have been the very reasons why people have been denied economic opportunity, denied opportunities for housing and education. And we'll cite those statistics and then move on. This program, what we're doing here today, says that we're not just going to move on. We are going to intentionally and specifically address these communities because these communities are worthy of that address. I think it's extremely important as we're moving this conversation forward to be very clear about what is considered criminal activity and what is considered legitimate opportunity. And that's important because our rhetoric and our language is changing right before our very eyes. Under California law, despite waging a war on drugs with cannabis and marijuana arrests kind of being the linchpin, now under California law, cannabis is no longer considered a drug. And just that language alone is significant. So as we're having this conversation about how we're moving forward, I believe that it's extremely important for us to acknowledge the truth, acknowledge these statistics exist, acknowledge that they're more than just statistics on paper. These are real people, real impacts. People have lost their jobs. People have been told that they can't get a student loan. The very things that we need as a society to move forward and make progress, entire populations of people have been denied. And what we're doing here is extremely significant, not only for community members here in the city of Los Angeles, but for community members across the United States. The demographics and statistics that you'll hear today will focus on the city of Los Angeles, but make no mistake, across the United States, these disparities exist. Across the United States, African Americans and Latinos are 4 times more likely to be arrested. Here in the state of California, just in 2015 alone, African Americans were 2 times more likely to be arrested for a marijuana misdemeanor and 5 times more likely to be arrested for a marijuana felony. And it's not just enough that we acknowledge past disparities. I think that it is incumbent upon us as we move this conversation forward to be able to identify those disparities in real time. We can't just say these disparities happened in the past and not acknowledge or pay attention to how they happen in real time and moving forward. So I appreciate the opportunity to be a part of this conversation, to be a part of Los Angeles' leadership on this issue, because with this issue and with many other issues, there's only so much that Los Angeles can follow. We have to lead the conversation. So I appreciate your leadership on this issue, and I look forward to sticking around to answer any questions that folks might have moving forward. Thank you.
So please begin.
President Wesson, members of the committee, it's an honor to be here before you on this matter. I have to say, in my 30 years of planning experience, I've seldom had the opportunity to work on such a meaningful program.
Thank you.
I'd like to say my name is Dan Giraud. I'm a program manager for AMIC Foster Wheeler. Wanted to run briefly through the presentation tonight. I'm just going to give brief introductory remarks, and I'm going to turn it over to Milena Wright, who's a very bright, young, smart analyst, the primary author of this report. She'll be followed by Ms. Rita Bright, who also has 30 years of planning experience, was the project manager. I want to emphasize that this report, by by nature and by requirement, had to be prepared using rigorous planning and statistical analyses. Your council will need a firm basis in fact for approval of this program, and I hope we have provided that for you. Rita will run through the recommendations regarding licensing, eligibility, and the program components after Milena gives you a brief overview of the approach and methodologies utilized. So thank you for having us here.
Thank you. Go ahead.
So the purpose of this program was to promote equitable ownership and employment opportunities in the cannabis industry in order to decrease disparities in life outcomes for marginalized communities and to address the disproportionate impacts of the war on drugs in those communities. Federal guidance on such issues focuses on disproportionate impacts to minority communities and low-income communities. However, due to Prop 209, government programs, including this one, cannot consider race as eligibility criteria. Nevertheless, we believe race is a good corroborating factor, and thus we will bring it forward in our analysis, but it will not be part of eligibility criteria. Instead, our report will be focused on income and arrest data as key criteria.
Okay.
So first, I would like to talk about the disparities. Next slide. So Black and African Americans, as well as Latinos, consume and sell cannabis at approximately the same rates as other segments of the population. However, considering this, you would think that the proportion of these individuals' representation in the population would be the same as their representation in terms of those arrested for cannabis-related crimes. However, as we can see here, Black and African Americans represent 9.6% of the city's population. However, they account for 40% of the cannabis-related arrests. This is a map showing the distribution of arrests within the city of Los Angeles. Areas that are red have more cannabis-related arrests. And as you can see, areas like Watts, Broadway, Manchester, downtown, Skid Row, and San Julian Park have a disproportionate number of cannabis-related arrests.
So just if I can, so the areas that are red in color are the highest number of arrests.
Correct. And so that includes council districts such as Council District 8, Council District 9, Council District 14, and Council District 15 have the highest number of arrests.
Okay, now also there's a almost orangish color or whatever, and that's a high rate?
Correct.
So when we look down in this area, we can see the very high and high rate is a condensed area. Okay,
Correct.
Sorry to interrupt. Go
No,
ahead.
please. And so the following map weeds out these areas based on low income. So we overlaid a low income map with the areas that had high and very high cannabis-related arrests. And as you can see, areas that had a high and very high cannabis-related arrests also had a high percentage of low-income households. On September 30th, we had a public workshop in Watts. Approximately 600 community members showed up to the meeting, and we asked them what they would like to see from such a social equity program. The top three most important things they noted was they would like technical assistance, which would be to help them start up their business or to achieve compliance with city regulations. A lot of community members were really focused on community investment. We wanted to make sure that this program not only helped the individuals who want to participate in the cannabis industry, but also the communities that were affected by the war on drugs. Individuals were also very interested in having priority ranking, such that they would have an ability to compete in the cannabis industry from the get-go. And a lot of individuals were very interested in incorporating diversity as a separate component than the social equity program. In addition, individuals raised the concern about their ability to operate during the licensing process. If an individual hands in their application, they want to make sure that they can continue to operate until they receive their license. So as it stands, there are proposed 2 licensing windows. The first would be Prop N, priority licensing, which would last 60 days. And the second is Window 2, which would include social equity program and general processing. Approximately 12,000 to 14,000 commercial cannabis applications are anticipated. And this gets at the concern of their ability to operate while they wait for their application to be processed. And in addition, all these licenses would currently require discretionary approval, which means there may be hearings, which may pose a barrier to these applicants. And now I'll pass it on to Rita to talk about our proposed recommendations.
Welcome.
Thank you, Chairman Wesson and members of the committee. So in terms of our recommendations in our report, first regarding licensing, given what Milena mentioned, the metrics of the number of applications that may come forth, we're recommending streamlined permitting. Even though a discretionary action may be required, there are mechanisms and ways to reduce the processing time because time is of the essence. So we would recommend upfront development standards that are clear, that could be implemented, and can make that discretionary process a lot faster. Also, not necessarily having public hearings, having a threshold for when public hearings might be required, but allowing some of those to be fast-tracked without the need to be bogged down with a hearing schedule. We also mentioned, Milena touched on provisional licensing. 2 types that we indicated were conditional approvals for equity applicants without real estate to give that time to get things put in order, but also have the provisional licensing that can be a bit of a protective status in place. Type 2 is also limited immunity to compliant businesses that are not Prop D dispensaries. We're recommending that as well. Also, in terms of individual business license limits, allowing for multiple licenses, which can be quite efficient, but limiting to the total number. And this is something that's sort of a policy decision to try to see what that number is, but we would recommend.
When you say
yes.
multiple licenses, do you mean multiple per person, or I don't understand?
Per business, whether it's a person or whether it's a cooperative, but to allow some flexibility so that you can have, for instance, perhaps cultivation and manufacturing. Also, we talked about equity applicant participant ratio, which we've already talked about, but it's a 1-for-1 ratio at a minimum that we're recommending. So it would be 1 equity applicant to every 1 general applicant starting in window 2. And I just want to remind everyone that this program was originally initiated where there were more classifications of windows. And so what we've really tried to do is elevate social equity to be a higher and compress the equity windows, or the windows of eligibility. Some members of the public hit upon eligibility of the ownership requirement, and our
That
main
was Mr. Cisneros, so let's answer his question.
Okay.
He's still here.
Okay.
Let's answer his question.
All righty. So in terms of ownership requirement, the main intent here is to address the potential abuse that could occur where someone is just a figurehead or is solicited or pursued so that, we could fast track really what appears to be a market rate type of operation. And so what we thought at a minimum that should be considered is the 51% ownership or majority of board of directors. And I know there was concern about the board of directors component. And again, this is a policy decision, but our point was that if there is a corporation and there's a board of directors for that corporation, then the board of directors should be in majority of social equity eligibility population and not the alternatives.
Did you, by chance, compare, like right now, are the majority of the businesses 51% owned, or is it, are we asking for something that's not the norm here?
Melina can jump in, but what I would say is that, there's a lot of information we don't know about all activities. And so I couldn't say emphatically that this is consistent with what is in the existing setting, because there's a lot of information that has been kind of undercover, if you will, for a long time. So what our intention, though, is with this is to have it be a majority.
Yes, and this 51% is based on the Oakland Social Equity Program. That's what they choose to use in order to ensure that they're not equity strawmen who are receiving the benefits.
All right. Continue.
And this was also brought up by a member of the public, too, as the residency requirement. We're not recommending that the residency be the last 5 years or sequential years, but that there is some background where someone had a life experience in the city of Los Angeles. And so what we try to do to allow for some flexibility is have a potential eligible applicant show proof of 5 years of residency, a cumulative 5 years, and that there would need to be, of the total social equity eligible applicants, at least 70% that hit that mark. So again, what we're trying to do is build in some flexibility to the director of the Department of Cannabis Regulation to have a little discretion on that and a little flexibility.
Okay, before we move to the next page, God, I can't remember the brother. It was either Mr. Ross or Mr. Page. Somebody talked about percentage of ownership. Was that Ross or Page? Both, maybe. So was thought given to some kind of tier for different levels? Let's say if I want to own a third of the business or a quarter of the business. So do we account for that at all?
Currently, the policy states, I'll let you jump in too, Melina, but currently what we're recommending is a 51% ownership. Certainly there could be flexibility provided to that.
Okay. Yeah, jump on in, Mr. Weezar, and then I think the best way to do this is when we have a question, let's just jump in and do it. So let me go, Mr. Weezar, and then Mr. Harris-Dawson.
Okay, going back to the ownership, the 51% ownership, you're recommending social equity applicants must have at least 51% ownership in the business or the majority of the board of directors. And the reasoning for that is that you want to capture that the organization itself is always have some minority participation. But if you put the or, I don't think we're capturing it that way, because 51% directors doesn't necessarily translate into the injustices we're trying to correct. Some organizations organize themselves in such a way that they do get a percentage of the business. Others do not. They're more just there for advice and recommendations. So I think if we put the or there and we have the 51% board of directors, that's going to be a huge loophole that people are going to take advantage of, and it's not necessarily going to translate into what we're trying to capture. I mean, a lot of this has to do with the way organizations are structured. And like I said, some organizations say, board of directors, you get a certain percentage of the business. Or, board of directors, your role is only to advise and give us direction and recommendations. So we don't have, we can't control that unless we require them to say, board of directors shall be compensated or shall be part ownership, whatever it is. If we go that step, then I think the 50% ownership, board of directors would make sense. I'm just putting it out there as possible recommendation. So when we correct that or come back with some recommendations.
I think the three of us, from the minute Mr. Cisneros mentioned it, saw that could be an opening for things to come that we would not want. So if I could ask Ms. Packard, along with the consultants, let's noodle on that and try to come up with a way to tighten that up. Mr. Harris-Dawson?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to follow up on something the chairman asked about. Is the marker that we're setting out consistent with reality? So are we actually going to be able to find these businesses? So I had a question about Oakland. So you said that Oakland used the 51%. did they find that there were actually folks ready to step up at that level of ownership to satisfy their intentions?
Yes. So they have not fully implemented their program yet, but they have started receiving applications, and they have had almost the same number of general applicants and equity applicants interested in applying.
So the people are there.
Continue.
All right. So we do recommend eligibility tiers, and with that, commensurate with the different benefits. And again, this is something that's a policy decision for the council to consider and the committees to consider. But what we felt our intention behind this tiering was to ensure that in reality, when there's a pot of funds or benefits to provide, that those that most suffered or most met the criteria behind the purpose and intent were provided the strongest level of eligibility benefits. So you'll see tiers 1 through 4, those being low-income residents of the city and prior cannabis-related conviction in California. The second being low-income residents of the city and immediate family member who was convicted of a cannabis-related crime in California. The third being low-income residents of the city that live or have lived in eligible districts for 5 accumulative years. And Tier 4 is a social equity program community partner. And so those would be the eligibility criteria proposed. Again, moving on.
Could you just spend another couple of minutes on the residency requirement issue? Does that mean just walk me through that one more time. Does that mean they have to be in this area where there's high arrest for a total of 5 years throughout their life? Do they have to be residents of the city? Walk us through that, because I hear some mumbling up here about that.
So 5 accumulative years for being a resident of the city, and then for being a resident of one of the proposed eligible districts for 5 accumulative years, that would only apply to Tier 3.
Okay, I got you. Go on.
So we have defined the eligible districts, as Milena had talked about, in methodologies. These are police reporting districts with a high number of cannabis-related arrests and a percentage of low-income households. So again, just kind of reinforcing that that's what the definition of an eligible district as we've identified in those figures for you earlier in our presentation. And we use the metric for low income at or below 80% of the county's 2017 average median income. And again, we recommend that this be an adaptive program. And so again, flexibility, if it's monitored and checked, that median income can also go with the present time. So we would look at present median income at that time as well. And finally, in terms of criminal record, no more restrictive than the state requirements per Prop 64. We don't see at this point in time the need to vary from that, but go with the state's guidance. So then we get into the incubator pilot program, and component 1 is to look at the benefits, and in this program it is the matching of market rate with social equity partners, and we're looking at least the provision of a minimum of 1,000 square feet or 10% of space when that's available, and business mentor, and when it's not, we'll get into that as well. Business mentoring, technical assistance, hard capital, and sponsor workshops. And this is something that could be heightened and provided a percentage more if a partner seems strong and a valid partner with a social equity partner but does not have the real estate. Then there needs to be some other forms of compensation to make up for that. But what we've recognized from the City of Oakland and speaking with their staff on their program is that real estate is the biggest challenge. So we think it really deserves a high priority in trying to provide those opportunities and the partnerships. And then that an incentive could be a tax rebate after 3 years of partnership. And the intent behind that, too, is not to allow for this be of, a flash in the pan kind of partnership where they get together and then, the market rate partner expects all these benefits. They don't get anything like a tax rebate until there's proof or evidence that there's at least 3 years of success and effectiveness of the partnership. And if a equity partner goes out of business, let's say optimistically they become so successful they want to branch off on themselves, then the market rate partner would need to continue to fill that void for a minimum of 3 years in order to get that tax rebate. Component 2 is one that is intended to be one of those carrot type of approaches as opposed to a stick, and that's when if there's a landlord who's been found to lease to non-licensed entities for cannabis-related activities, that the city can waive the fines of the landlord partners if they agree to provide space to social equity partners as participants. So it's another way to see if we can get people out of, a non-conforming situation and at the same time allow for equity partnership opportunities. And in terms of the workforce, again, we would like to see that the workforce of these partnerships include living wage rates, workforce composition, and diversity plans. This is something we heard at the workshop as well, at the public workshop on September 30th, is it would be great to continue to promote diversity even if this program is focused on social equity, but to have a diverse workforce that's working for you. And again, technical assistance, we're looking at help and assistance with applications, compliance, and business incentives, because it's a maze. And so what we think is that there needs to be strength in staffing to help with that process. Other things to consider is eligible city lands and waived or deferred fees, which are also expressed as being pretty important to a successful program, is to make the fees realistic. And going quickly, just social equity investment program and funding, such as city provision of zero low interest loans, community reinvestment that Kat and Milena also already discussed, very important to reinvest in those communities, and expungement of past cannabis criminal records are things that we are recommending. And in terms of the operation and funding of this, we support the actions to, and we recommend, and we saw some of your actions on tomorrow's agenda, which look at having some of the staffing already that we've identified in our program, which is including licensing and compliance and social equity program coordinator. And I think in terms of the diversity program, we've already discussed that. And that concludes our presentation, unless you have additional questions for us.
Well, we may, but I want to get a review from Ms. Packard. Did you want to maybe wrap this up a little bit in a bow or highlight some of the things that were brought up or put an emphasis on something, whatever you... In fact, is there any, I didn't see, but, reentry program, individuals that that are coming out that need a gig, they're extra. How is all of that folded into this?
That's part of the workforce requirement. So 50% of the workforce composition should include individuals with disabilities, veterans, members of the LGBTQ+ community, as well as individuals who were convicted of a cannabis crime previously. So individuals re-entering the workforce.
Okay. To you.
Thank you. Essentially, the intention and crux of the program is to create economic opportunity in communities that have been disproportionately impacted. That economic opportunity can take multiple forms. through jobs, business ownership, or community reinvestment. The program and report itself can really be broken up into two different strategies. One is identifying the criteria of the applicant that we would be trying to support. That is what is articulated within the tiered programs. We, as recommendations, have diverted from Oakland's model in the creation of tiers because it seems as though it might make more sense to direct the most programs towards community members who had been most impacted. That way, if you were directly impacted by a cannabis arrest, that you would have access to the majority of program resources. If you were less impacted, you would have access to less resources. But essentially, the first set of criteria would outline what types of applicants we wanted to support within this program. The other half of the program really outlines and details services that would be available to these applicants. And as our consultants had just articulated, there are barriers that were first and initially identified. And so a lot of the recommendations that have been put forth are means for community members to get through these various barriers. But we have to be upfront and transparent about what those barriers are, namely capital, land, and then just the ability to navigate this process, the ability to walk through what it's actually going to take to get a license, both at the state and local level, and then also what it's going to take to be and remain compliant. And that last part about what it's going to take to get and remain compliant is really what I see as a part 2 of this program. The analysis and recommendations that have been put forth really focus on access. What we are trying to do with this program and these recommendations are to ensure that these community members have access to this industry and economic opportunity. As it's already been contemplated, this department would be responsible for reporting to the committee, reporting to City Council on how the program is being implemented. But at some point, this conversation is going to have to shift from access to sustainability and compliance. But just to note that this program and its initial recommendations focus on access. It was mentioned, and I think that it is just as important and might even be more important that the city moves forward with a model for community reinvestment. In the larger scheme of cannabis policy and economic opportunity, truthfully, there are only so many members who are going to participate in this industry. There will be thousands of people who participate in this industry here in the city of Los Angeles because we are so large. But there are many more community members that have been impacted that will not choose to participate in this industry. So how do we use this policy as a means to support those communities as well? And that way is through community reinvestment. The community reinvestment model and recommendations that are put forth in this report are somewhat modeled off of what the state of California has done with Proposition 64. In Proposition 64 in the Adult Use of Marijuana Act, the state of California designates up to $50 million a year towards community reinvestment to go back specifically towards community members that have been most impacted, so that when we understand that arrests affect housing, employment, and education, that we can use tax revenue to go directly towards housing, education, and employment for those community members. The state of California at this point has been the most progressive and supportive of a community reinvestment model. And in the grand scheme of things, they have dedicated 5% of their total tax revenue. If the city were to move forward with a community reinvestment model of 20% of tax revenue, going back towards communities most impacted. This will be one of the single most significant opportunities to repair those communities. We would be going above and beyond what the state of California has done, and I truly do believe that a 20% threshold in community reinvestment is appropriate, particularly when we look at that 20% in real numbers and then go back to the disparities and statistics that we were looking at. African Americans and Latinos, the statistic that comes to my mind is for African Americans at the time, 10% of the population, but 7 times more likely to be arrested. If we were talking about a true and one-for-one equity model, then those community members would be 7 times more likely to be licensed. But that's not what we're doing. So I think that it is very appropriate for us to move forward with the most significant and transformative model of a 20% community reinvestment fund. In addition,
I want to jump in and you made me think of another question. Everybody indicates the consumption rate is about the same, but yet and still when you look at who gets arrested, who spends time in jail or prison, it's African Americans and Latinos. Where'd you get Miss Silent and Deadly? Where did you get that data?
From a Drug Policy Alliance report.
A little louder.
From a Drug Policy Alliance report. And LAPD records as well.
I think that's important to when you first have this conversation, you can list all these disparities, but I think that it is important to frame the conversation around the fact that people are using and consuming and selling at about the same rates.
That's critical.
And it is often because police will deploy officers to high crime areas, and those areas are often thought to be low income in minority communities, that this is where these disparities are concentrated. I want to take a step back because I think that these recommendations are big picture items, but there's still lots of details that need to be determined. And what I would ask of the City Council, as you all are considering how to structure these details, is to allow the Department of Cannabis Regulation some flexibility in how it implements this program, and even as to some of the criteria that gets used.
We count on working directly with you. One of the reasons why you're here is because we want to take advantage of your expertise and your mindset on this subject. So I view this is going to be a partnership, and so you can count on us working together.
I truly appreciate it. I think that it is significant in a number of ways that the city is moving forward in considering this program, but also that this program has to match up with the larger regulatory framework that we move forward. And that is still evolving both at the state and local level. And so I think that it is going to be key and critical that we allow flexibility and don't tie ourselves down just too soon when the rest of the landscape is still very much shifting. One of the conversations that still needs to be determined is exactly when the one-for-one processing would start. There are conversations as to whether or not that starts when phase 2 starts, essentially. So you'd have the Prop D, Prop M folks go forward, and then you'd see a one-for-one program. But then there is also an opportunity to, after the Prop D and Prop M folks move forward, if we know that we have about, let's say, 150 of those folks, that we then hold that space until we get a one-for-one ratio and have the same number of social equity applicants equal the number of Prop M applicants. So that is still a determination that needs to be made, along with ensuring that folks who move forward with the property priority also have equity requirements of those businesses as well, so they don't miss the equity boat. And then lastly, I do know that there has been a strong desire for community members to see some type of diversity program as well. I've had many folks come up to me in meetings or approach various city council members, and they'll say, what about women? What about LGBT members? What about veterans? What about folks with disabilities? We absolutely want these people to be a part of the industry. As we're laying the foundation for this industry, we have an opportunity to do things in ways that have not been done before. But what would complicate things, and what I think would be inappropriate at this time, is for us to try and usher those individuals into the social equity program, diluting the meaning of social equity. I think that the pie is large enough for folks to have access to it and folks to have a seat at the table. But I think that if community members are still interested and supportive of a diversity program, that we move forward with creating a program that is separate and outside of the social equity program.
Thank you. And as we're going forward, again, it just makes sense to me that we have a conversation, or that you guys would look at a tier or some kind of a bump or credit if an individual, let's say, is a 33 1/3% partner. I'm not saying I'm asking for that, but I'd like to see statistics on that. A lot of companies, not just in this industry, have, different layers. So if there would be a way that we could set that up, if that would help an existing company by bringing in another partner at a significant percentage, I think we want to have some conversation about that. So I don't know how you begin, but if you would start to noodle on that and look at some figures, because what I don't want is for us to miss this opportunity. I think that this is a big opportunity, and when I say this, I mean it. I truly believe that there are cities throughout the United States of America that are watching what we do right here in LA. And I don't want us to overlook, screw it up, because I think people are dependent upon us. So I want to look under every rock, behind every door, to try to come up with something that works, because I think that that's critical. I say it all the time. The winds in this country blow from the west to the east. I believe that. And so we need to, I agree with you, it's time for us to lead. Okay? So let's be as creative, and again, make sure whatever we do can be protected within the law. Maybe Mr. Albright, there may be a use for your company yet, and some of the other smart law firms that decide to put together a division that specializes in this industry. So any other questions? I still have more. You want to ask questions now? Who wants to go?
Okay, sure.
Mr. Harris Dawson.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. I just want to start by thanking you all for putting forward this report and the
Let's
work
give them a round of applause.
that
There's a
went
lot of
into
work.
This is excellent work. You all got at every question, and I think the spirit with which you approach the issue is what comes shining through. All of the facts and figures that you receive, that we see here. I wanted to pick up on a couple things that our general manager pointed out. and that is that, you know, a one-to-one match, which I have a amendment to the motion we put forward that articulates the one-to-one match. The one-to-one match may seem like an aggressive program, but it's actually very conservative if you look at this data. I've gone through all your tables of arrests and citations. There's not a single category where African Americans and Latinos don't make up 75%, at least, of infractions, arrests, and the more serious the charge, the bigger the percentage of disproportionality. I mean, I've always said that 209 banned every government program from considering race except for the war on drugs, which has obviously been considering race up until 2015. So we thank you for that. I think that I want to thank Council President Wesson for the work that he's done to get us to this point. We've been all over the city. We've talked to people from all over the country, and it is true. If we get this right, and we can enshrine your recommendations into policy, Los Angeles will lead the entire country on this issue. So again, thank you all so much. We've put in an amendment to our motion, and we look forward to carrying this across the finish line.
Mr. Huizar.
Thank you very much, and I also, too, want to thank people who prepared this report. It's been said, but I think it should not be understated that what we're doing today is correcting some historical wrongs when we move forward and adopt some of these recommendations. And it's always great to be able to be in a position to not only implement policy that would make cannabis accessible to those who need it and want it, but also those who have been pushing for the social equity program should be commended, because here we are. When this conversation first started, it seemed like a long shot, I think, because most people would not want to bother with this type of thing, quote unquote. But here we are with a great report, data, statistics for us that gives us a basis for which us to move forward. So thank you, Mr. Chairman, for your leadership and for everyone else who brought us to this point. My only question is this. I'm still trying to understand, if we move forward tomorrow on the ordinance in council and we committed to ourselves that we would not move forward with the full implementation of this policy without a social equity program, how do we plan to line them up eventually, and when will that happen? I'm still trying to grasp my head around that.
Well, here, I'll jump in where it relates to this. Hopefully tomorrow what we'll do, we'll be instructing the city attorney's office to begin drafting a very complex document. Meanwhile, this committee will continue to work with some haste to refine the social equity program, and then hopefully within a couple of weeks or so, we'll insert that into the draft of the ordinance. At least that's the plan. So I'm very optimistic that between the three of us, with a few more meetings or another meeting, we'll be able to shape this and still have enough time to put it into the draft that the city attorney is going to be working on.
Okay.
Now, I don't know,
Thank you.
Ms. Packard, if you wanted to say anything else to that. I think that answers.
I agree. I share the concern. I want to make sure that the equity program is a part of how this entire regulatory framework gets worked out, and so I'll be working with city council members to make sure that that happens.
Okay. Thank you.
No, when we open the doors, the social equity will be one of the doorknobs, okay? So when we open the door, it'll be there. It'll be the doorbell, all right? Okay, so if you guys would stick around for a little while. Kim Bronson, Kim, I just saw her the other night. Kim, are you still? Yeah, I see you. Come on. Nathan Freeman, Kathy Smith. Is this Rashawn Everett? If I called you, just come up to the center and I wonder where you were going. It doesn't have to be in any order. Nathan, come on, I called you. Good morning. It's still morning.
Good morning. My name is Kim Patillo Brownson, and I'm the Vice President of Policy and Strategy at First 5 LA. I want to thank Council President Wesson, Council Members Weezar and Harris Dawson for the leadership and the innovation on the social equity approach, and in particular for the Community Reinvestment Fund proposal. The targeting of resources to most impacted communities is something that First 5 LA absolutely supports and is excited to see further developed. There are two vital clarifications that we want to underscore that we think would be very helpful. The first is that the Community Reinvestment Fund has an opportunity to acknowledge that it's not just incarcerated persons, but also the children of incarcerated persons who have borne the full brunt of what it has meant to have prior cannabis policy. Right now, across the country, we know there's 2.7 million children of incarcerated persons, a quarter of whom are 0 to 5. We know that 1 in 9 children, black children in LA, has an incarcerated parent, and they deserve redress as well. The second thing I'll just mention, if I can,
Go ahead.
Is that public education is mentioned as one of the priorities for the Community Reinvestment Fund. And targeting to pregnant and parenting teens is something that has acutely been a lesson learned from Colorado following legalization. We know that teens are 3 times as likely to continue cannabis usage while pregnant, and there are adverse impacts in health on in utero consumption. We also know that for teens who have young children, there's been a doubling of the hospitalization rates for infants and toddlers for accidental consumption, and these are things that the council can address. Thank you very much, and we appreciate your leadership.
Good to see you again.
Thank you.
Okay, Nathan, Kathy, Mr. Everett, Donnie Anderson. Yes.
Good morning. My name is Kathy Smith. I wanted to just
I'm not
thank...
taking any, but we're closing the card, so I just got the last one. Go ahead. Start her time all over again. Go on, Ms. Smith.
I wanted to thank everyone for this opportunity for us to speak. Also to thank Virgil Grant and Donnie Anderson for giving us the courage and the platform to speak up. Also, I'd like to thank anyone who had anything to do with Cat Packer coming on board. A million thanks. This is addressed to the city and the Office of the Finance. They have completely failed us. They have compliance, they have ordinances, they have policies that they themselves do not follow. The moratorium that was implemented to control this industry in 2007, giving out BTRCs, has completely stopped 9 years later. They continue to vilify us, they continue to condemn us, they continue to not follow their own rules. I have asked several times for an address to be changed for several people and they just refuse. It's taken in excess of 90 days to do this, and I don't understand why. I don't understand if they're lying or they're just incompetent. But if someone can please explain to me what the issue is, I'd really like to have some clarity, and I would like someone to communicate with us.
Thank you. Next.
Good morning, and thank you to the chair and this committee. I'm here on behalf of David Cunningham, Jr., who is the president of the BAPAC, Black American Committee of State of California. He couldn't be here today. He just wanted me to come and thank this committee and the work that this committee is doing, also the CLA's office. And we did our own economic social equity education form. I think I presented a copy of this to each committee member of where Ms. Kat Parker was one of our panelists and guest speakers. So again, just want to convey thank you to this committee, the City of Los Angeles, on behalf of our state chair, BAPAC State Chair, David Cunningham, Jr.
Thank you. Next speaker, please identify.
Greetings. My name is Rashawn Everett.
Pull the mic down, man.
Perfect. Rashawn Everett. Just had comments regarding some of the city restrictions. I saw that there was a comment that limited the affected districts, and I wanted to understand what that meant. Would the social equity program be refined to some of those districts where I guess the impact was higher, like the Watts, the South Central LA? Will we be prevented from other parts of Los Angeles? qualifying under social equity. I think there's a huge amount of irony in some of the redlining districts and some of the things that have been done historically to confine people of color within specific communities. So to reinforce those same redlining and jurisdictions by saying that we're only allowed to have dispensaries in our areas is very, I feel like, unfair.
That's not what. That's.
Is that what it said? That,
no.
Can you explain? Uh-huh.
The map is meant to identify people who live in that area
Right.
as being eligible for the social equity program. It doesn't mean that they can't do business anywhere in the city.
Okay. There was a comment that said eligible districts, so just wanted to clarify.
Yeah, so
Okay.
eligible to qualify for the social equity program. That means they're resident, not the business.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much for that clarification.
Okay. Donnie?
Good afternoon. I just want to say thank you so much for making LA a brighter day today. I come on behalf of the NAACP, California and State Hawaii. We wanted to say thanks. Ms. Huffman sends her regards to say thank you for being the city that's going to make every city proud of Los Angeles. We will continue to fight. Virgil and I have been from New York all the way to Atlanta, all the way to Baltimore. And every city has access to help with a social equity program. And we are proud to help be a partner in this. I just want to say it's been a long 2 years, but we're getting it done. Thank you so much.
Wait a minute. So, in these other cities that you've been working with, they're trying to put together a social equity program. That's what I was saying all along. The work that we do here today, I think we can make it so much easier for them if we just, kind of take our time a little bit, make sense, and just try to.
Every one of the states is waiting to see what we drop when we finish our everything. Once it's done, we're going to send that to them where they can see the model of LA.
Well, that's a huge responsibility, man.
That's
but
all right.
not one that we shy away from.
No, we built Ford tough. Thank you.
All right. Yes. Oh, and I'm looking for Bryant Mitchell, Shanice Bullock, and Rachel Johnson. And come on.
I'm Rachel Johnson. I'm with the
Okay,
LA.
well then I got you. Go on.
Okay, see? I'm with the LA Delivery Alliance and Goddess Delivers. And I just had a question about, I remember in Watts there was this big issue regarding landlords and whether or not they were going to even open up opportunities for people to get property. And I see that you guys made some other incentives for landlords to do it. What I keep hearing from black and brown people is that even with those incentives, they don't want to rent to black and brown people. So how do we overcome those issues as well? Because it's not just cannabis. It's I'm running into issues as a black person or as a brown person who would have issues getting real estate anyway, not necessarily just cannabis. So is there going to be a listserv that has like people who are landlord friendly, who are cannabis friendly, who are minority friendly, that the people in this room can go to and just click on there and say, okay, this is a good landlord, this is a good person that I can come to, or this is a cannabis friendly person, versus having to run out and do all this Craigslist, apartments, that stuff on my own, versus having people we already know that are friendly to this initiative.
Well, that you make a good point, and that's something that we should chat with our general manager about what would be the most appropriate way to try to provide assistance. I don't know if a list, if we had a list, it would be gone in 5 minutes. So I think we need to have some more conversation about that. So you bring up a very, very good point.
Mm-hmm. And then also, just really quickly, the difference between delivery dispensaries and storefront dispensaries, there are differences as far as public nuisance is concerned. Just making sure that landlords know that as well. All right, thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate that this issue being raised around real estate. This is one of the places where I think the onus is actually upon us as well to make sure we ask the industry to help us with this. So, there are lots of people doing lots of businesses that frankly know much more about this than the city's ever going to know. And I think one of the good things about the one-to-one match is there's an incentive for everybody in the industry to make sure the city meets its equity target. One of the ways you can help the city meet its equity target is by helping address this real estate question. So we really rely on everybody to be part of the community of making Los Angeles successful.
Yeah, but and I agree with you. We need a strategy, though. We need a strategy. Yeah. Yes,
Thank
sir.
you. My name is Brian Mitchell. I just want to say thank you for what you've put together so far this year and really pushing the social equity initiative. I'm a cultivator. I've been here in LA for over 5 years in the same location. Have dealt with some of the issues I've seen as a black cultivator, processor, and manufacturer trying to get our product out. And I think social equity is, I think I myself feel it more than anyone, being a business owner in this industry for so long, some of the issues we've had to deal with and some of the things we've had to overcome. So thank you. A lot of the points that I had have been addressed and brought up. So
Good.
For the most, I'd like to say thank you.
No, thank you. Okay, Ms. Bullock, I believe it is. You're the closer on this.
Yes.
And hopefully she can do better than the Dodgers closers. Gee. Yes.
Well, good morning, President, members, and the council. My name's Chauncey Bullock, and I would honestly say, I would say up to maybe 4 or 5 years ago, being here in the city of Los Angeles, being a property owner, I had a situation where I received a letter. That letter has constituted me to be in this room today. Me being held responsible for just renting a property that has placed me into the situation of getting in a better understanding as to this business and what it adds up to be. I found myself actually purchasing that business of getting those people out of my building and have found myself getting educated in this business. So with that, I have noticed what we have as a positive impact. The social equity program, I too would love to be I would say a candidate for that, because without understanding as the years have passed what it would mean to me and having and being impacted by the laws and not being aware of the laws, I would love the board, the members, and those involved with the decision making on this program to keep in mind for those that have been impacted, I mean truly impacted financially, economically, and according to every aspect of my life behind this, I have now found myself wanting to move forward. And that next level would be with the social equity program.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Mr. Clerk, any other business before this committee?
No, sir.
So I do want to thank all of you for coming. I want to thank our consultants. I want to thank our general manager. This meeting is adjourned. We'll see you the next time.